Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at Season 4 of Smallville. So in this season, Clark has been assigned by Jor-El to unite 3 stones known as the Knowledge Stones, if he is to continue his journey towards his destiny. So this is the final season set in Smallville High, and many consider it to be one of the weakest seasons in the entire show. I actually find it to be a little bit underrated. It definitely has its problems, but it's still a solid season of the show, especially if you're a big fan of the high school era. So, yeah, let's get into it. So first of all, I really liked what they did with Clark this season. Picking up where Season 3 left off, he's not quite the same at the beginning of the season, and for a brief moment he actually gets to fly, but only for that one brief moment. You'll have to wait much later to see him flying again, of course. And one thing I forgot to mention in any of the previous videos is that for a long time he's been wanting to play football, but because of his abilities, Jonathan wouldn't let him. So it isn't until this season that Jonathan really gives him the green light to do that. And it was great to see him play football, because had he not become a reporter at the Daily Planet, he probably would have become a football player. That would have been interesting. Clark Kent, the football player. What could have been? And also, it feels as if he's slowly warming up to the idea of embracing his destiny. He isn't completely running away from it, and where he ends up at the end of the season is absolutely satisfying, especially if you're a fan of the comics or the Christopher Reeve films. Lex becomes a little bit more obsessed with the idea of Clark having a secret, and it ties in with the Knowledge Stones because he is interested in them. And there's an episode called Onyx, which I highly recommend, where Lex is split into a good and evil version of himself. And the evil Lex Luthor is a pretty accurate representation of the traditional Lex Luthor we all know. Lionel has been incarcerated. However, this is the season where he becomes less of a villain and more of a morally grey character. There's an episode called Transference that features him and Clark basically switching bodies. If you're a fan of the whole body switch thing, then you're gonna enjoy that episode. Chloe tries to get a job at the Daily Planet, and she gets a surprise visit from her cousin, who I'll talk about in a bit. Lana, okay, about Lana. Everybody hates what the writers did with Lana this season. Basically, she could have had a send-off in Season 3, but they decided to bring her back and say, no, she's gonna tie into the plot regarding the Knowledge Stones. And how do they do that? Well, apparently she's the descendant of an ancient witch. Basically, the spirit of the witch possesses her, and that's like a major storyline. Now, everybody hates this because they think even in the realm of Smallville, it just feels really out of place. I actually like this storyline, though I get why people don't like it. It is a little bit goofy. Now, as far as the new characters are concerned, everybody who's watched Smallville knows that Season 4 introduces the one and only Lois Lane, played by Erica Durance. So Lois is in Smallville to finish school before signing up for the Daily Planet, and she so happens to be Chloe's cousin, which I really liked. You really buy these two as relatives. They could have been sisters and I wouldn't mind it. She and Clark have one or two interesting interactions here and there, but for now, they're just friends. And in my opinion, I think she was the best Lois Lane since Margo Kidder. Margo Kidder will always be my favorite. This season also introduces Jason Teague, who's played by Sam! Dean Winchester. Jensen Ackles, who plays Dean Winchester from Supernatural. So Jason is pretty much another love interest for Lana. And the way he ties into the story is quite interesting. Just don't expect what you see on Supernatural. From this season onwards, the show began to build up its own iteration of the Justice League, with this season introducing the Flash. Impulse. Yeah. Apparently they weren't allowed to use the Flash, so they just decided to go with Impulse. So he and Clark meet in the episode Run. The way they meet is pretty cool, and it's one of the most memorable episodes of the season. And there's also an episode that features one of the comic book villains. Yeah, that's his name. I'm not even gonna try with that. And one guest star in particular that totally took me by surprise was Margo Kidder. She plays Bridget Crosby, an emissary of Dr. Swan, who plays a pivotal role in the story. I wish we would see more of her, but sadly due to Christopher Reeve's passing and the fact that she felt that the show was trying to capitalize on his death, that wasn't going to happen. Well, rest in peace to both of them. And then there's the finale. The finale was quite interesting. It's kind of like 24 with Superman. I mean, it has its own timer, although I think it was more of a countdown if I recall. So imagine if Jack Bauer had to stop an intergalactic threat of sorts and he only had 24 hours. It's kind of like that. And it has one of the best cliffhangers of the show. And there was even a special event on the night of the finale's premiere, where immediately after the season 4 finale, you'd get the first few minutes of Batman Begins, which came out that year. And it's a shame I never got to see it around that time, but I did catch Batman Begins that year. And man, it was an excellent film. Now, I do have some issues with this season. It's not perfect. Firstly, everyone's expecting me to hop on the Lana storyline. But like I said, I didn't mind it. But what I do mind is that several aspects of the show were starting to get stale at this point. The fact that the characters were still in high school, the tone of the season. You see, after season 3, the ratings dipped because of how dark the show was becoming. And so the producers decided to lighten things up again. Make it campy, make it cheesy, make it fun. Not a good move, because at this point, the cornier roots of the show felt played out. It felt too familiar. It felt like we had moved past that. It did boost the show's ratings, but in the long run, it felt like a mistake. It really, really did. Several monsters of the week being in Smallville High made a lot of episodes very predictable. Clark and Lana's feelings being very on and off. The conflict between Clark and his parents. All of that started to get a little bit stale at this point. With season 3, it felt like the show was going places. And then with season 4, considering this is Clark's final year in high school, it felt like they were stalling in some areas. And aside from that, some episodes are not particularly good. The first episode where Lana becomes a witch can be a little bit cheesy, and there may be some other episodes that involve some really weird uses of kryptonite. Kryptonite soda, kryptonite plastic surgery, it's a little bit cheesy by this point, but the show did take itself a little bit more seriously going forward. So yeah, those were my thoughts on Season 4 of Smallville. Next time we're going to look at Season 5, a huge turning point for the show. So thank you all for watching. Please be sure to like the video, share it and subscribe, hit the notification icon. Be safe during this time, and I'll see you soon.